Thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to have all of you here. My name is Catherine Preston. I am one of the programmers for the Philadelphia Film Society. And let's kick it off here. So why don't we start with the writers and directors?
Hi to the Philadelphia audience. My name is Christine Molloy, and I'm one of the co-writers and directors of Rose Plays Julie. Based here today in London, coming at you from Hackney in East London.
And I'm Joe Lawlor. It may look like I'm in a different place, but literally if you look behind us, you can see a train track, and that same train might go past Christine's window. We just wanted to not be in the same room so we can kind of have independent voices. But hello to Philadelphia. And it's great that our film was chosen to be part of the festival, so we're very pleased about that.
Oh yeah, we're very happy to have you. And we are also joined with Star and Skelly.
Hi, yeah, I'm Anne Skelly. How's it going? I'm not in Joe and Christine's apartment.
But you are in London.
I am in London, yeah. The other side, as far away as possible.
Wise move.
And then Stephen.
Yeah, I'm Stephen McKeon. I'm the composer, and I am talking to you from Wicklow in Ireland, where it's raining, dark, gothic. Very different, I think, from Philadelphia.
That's a beautiful sunny day here.
Oh.
Well, great.
Don't rub it in.
So your film, it premiered BFI London. That probably feels like a lifetime ago. That was like late 2019. How has it been now, sort of promoting the film and trying to stay engaged with audiences during this crazy pandemic that we're all dealing with?
I mean, I think we're lucky that we had our world premiere at the London Film Festival, and you know, Anne was there and Stephen was there. Of course, we were there, and we got to present the film to an audience in an amazing context. And we had 5 screenings at the London Film Festival, which you know, it meant that the film got out to a number of audiences. And then you have done the thing that you have wanted to do for the many years you've been working on the film, just hand it over to an audience, and to, you know, to be there and to see what the reaction is and to talk to people afterwards. So we got so lucky that we got that under our belt. And then we had also a screening at the Dublin Film Festival, which is on the 28th of February. Again, Anne was there and Stephen was there. They joined us. And it was at the beginning of the whole pandemic thing, really. We went from London over to Dublin, and we're already feeling nervous and wondered whether it was a very clever thing for us to be doing, particularly as we were leaving our daughter behind here in London while we were in Dublin gallivanting and, you know, showing our film to a Dublin audience. But I still couldn't have anticipated what was ahead of us. And of course, so many things got derailed. We were due to go to the San Francisco Film Festival, so that got knocked on the head because that festival was cancelled. So there was the initial kind of shock of festivals being cancelled left, right and centre. And then people quickly regrouped, which is no surprise. And we're all trying to get used to this different way of doing things. But I think for us, the relief is that we've been able to get momentum behind the film again and find audiences and connect with audiences again. So it's different, but we're still grateful and thankful for it, because that was always the desire and the idea and the aim, which is to get the film in front of audiences. So it's a bit of a head wreck, but we feel really grateful to festivals like Philadelphia, who have found new ways of, you know, delivering your festival to your audience. And we're just really happy to be a part of it. I don't know if anybody would add to that.
No, I think it is great that it's finally beginning to come out. I know we're planning on doing release in March in North America next year, as well as the UK and Ireland. So I think anything that we're doing in advance with audiences to spread the word can only be helpful. But I do think it was funny when you were meeting other filmmakers, and there was a sort of like you know, a rush to the bottom in terms of how bad it could be. So we were saying, or somebody might say, I feel really sorry for you that the film was made, it had just been premiered, and no sooner had it been premiered, it was going into lockdown, and its kind of life, its journey got a bit halted. And we were saying, well, we think it was worse for you because you shot the film and now you're struggling to get it edited. And someone else is saying, well, I feel sorry for you that you never got a chance to actually make the film because you actually had it all financed and you were ready to go. So it's like we're all losing here one way or the other, but we were all trying to weirdly console each other. But whatever way you cut it, it's the experience was affected. And what's kind of inspiring is the different ways in which people are trying to live with it, coexist with this, and trying to find, you know, a little bit like fracking. Is there any kind of space in between, you know, exhibition to try and find a way for work to get out there and for people to still have cinema as part of their conversation before, you know, because it's not an overstatement. I mean, there's been articles here saying, is this the end of the cinema going experience? I mean, quite apocalyptic. And, you know, one can see that they're not over the top when they're making these prognoses. So we're in a real transition point. And so that's why it's really important that Philadelphia kind of exists and creatively responds to the situation in the way that they do.
I mean, definitely grateful for Zoom. I was saying before you all hopped on to Stephen, like this conversation is not one that probably would have happened if we had a normal festival, just given geographically where we're all located. So in a weird way, it's sort of connecting us in ways that we didn't have before. So one of the things I love so much about the film is all of these different layers of this notion of acting, right? Whether it's literally in a TV show, or just our day-to-day masks we put on, or, you know, different personalities we want to explore in ourselves. I would love to hear a little bit about how that idea came to be and how that kind of went into both the writing and the performance level.
And do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, well, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I thought, I remember in the first, is it the first edition or the recall stages, when I actually got to meet you guys, and Joe and Christine, and you asked me something about like the notion of identity, like that you mentioned that the film was kind of about that, and I was and I think one thing my character finds out when she's about 8 that she's adopted, her parents tell her, her adoptive parents tell her, and I think the idea there is that ever since then she's kind of been like ruminating on this thing of like, all of a sudden I had a solid place in myself and in the world, and I felt like I knew where I came from, and all of a sudden it felt like a bit of a spiral out into the abyss of like, okay, I don't know like where my DNA is from, like kind of thing, and ever since then it's been a kind of a searching thing. And so when she finds her adoption papers and birth certificate and things like that, and she finds this box, or you know, her name is originally Julie, and I think then it's just kind of like piecing fragments of yourself together and trying to then fulfill that role or put your feet, it's like going into a parallel universe where you're trying to put your feet in this other shoes that maybe you should have always been walking in. And then obviously when she meets her biological father, or she finds out the story from her biological mother, Ellen, and then she traces down her biological dad, she then, I guess, tries to recreate the circumstances of her conception in a way, or trying to understand this man, or look at him in some way, and in some way find parts of herself, which I do think you know, you do with characters and acting. Even though you're not looking at your biological parents, you're looking at yourself a bit and the other character. So yeah, I think it's a funny thing to, yeah, as well, like her trying to nearly heal her trauma like subconsciously by actually going through the events that caused this whole traumatic incident. And yeah, that thing of like, and I was actually listening to a book. I don't know if Christine and Joe, you've had this in your head or what, but probably did. But and it was something about psychology, and they were talking about, I think, trauma in children, and what this psychologist would do is he would let the child enact nearly whatever way they perceived the situation and kind of find their own voice in that pretend situation, and, you know, change the story a bit. And I thought that was interesting how it comes through into our film as well, even though it's been a year or two later or something.
This idea of, I mean, identity is a key thing, but the idea of something performed, and we, you know, that old image of wearing masks that we have in various cultures, or we wear a mask in order to transport ourselves into another place. So, and that the same can be the case of in costumes as well. You know, somebody in a religious organization may go to an elaborate ritual and changing clothes to make them different to the rest of the community, but then you endow somebody with those you know, the respect because of the performance of the ritual that's involved. So I think as we grow up as kids, the role playing that we do, I remember our daughter, for a while, she had this friend. We probably all have had this secret friend as you're growing up as a kid that you would talk to. And her friend was called Katie. And she would say, you know, Katie, she'd be on a little phone when she was a very small child, a toddler, talking to Katie, and Katie would say this and Katie would say that, and she would talk to Katie. It was a very full-blown relationship, and there was a whole performance inevitably involved in the dialogue with Katie. But obviously Molly's using Katie to do other kinds of growing, developing. And I remember we were in the car one day and Molly had tears running down her eyes, our daughter Molly. And we said, what's the matter? And she's, you know, whatever, she's about 3. And she said, I made up Katie, real. And we went, that's okay. We kind of knew that. It was incredible to watch that. But you do think about children and the performances they do and how it resolves or develops or kind of heals or augments a psychology or a psychological profile or your own emotional development. It's a very, very key thing. So ideas of donning masks or wigs or clothing to enter into another world, like Rose becoming Julie, we've always been fascinated by that. I think it's a very deep human thing, but our own interest in other films, it could be Vertigo or whatever, we love that. And I don't know why we love it necessarily, but we're very seduced by those ideas. Like, I don't know, the other night we were watching the 1970s film, The Stepford Wives. And again, this idea of that switching of real to, you know, cyborgs. And I don't know why it's fascinating to us, but maybe it's something to do with an anxiety about who we are could change and could be volatile, and we're quite precious and fragile people. And yeah, I mean,
in the writing process, so many things change along the way, but the thing that didn't change for us and was always there from the beginning was the idea that Ellen was an actress. The character Rose had different, you know, different versions of Rose existed along the way in different screenplays. And also for Peter, your biological father, Peter, he even had a different name. He was a different character completely. He belonged in a whole different world at different stages. But Ellen was always an actress. And early on in the development, some people thought that maybe that's a bit on the nose. but actually to be that literal with the idea of acting, to take away from your real self so that she could disappear into a role, seemed right to us for Ellen. And we argued along the way in the development process that should remain the way it was, the way we always imagined it, because it's about playing with the idea of performance and identity. And of course, what we have most clearly when we think about that is this profession called acting. And it was important to us that Rose first meets her mother in that way, not as who she is, but as a performed version of herself, and when she's interpreting a role on the screen and in a costume. And then she carries that. And we didn't always have Rose pretending to be in a play. I can't remember when there's things that arrived late, but then things become clear and obvious along the way. I can't remember how late into things that emerged as a very clear idea. And I don't know, Stephen, for you, in terms of encountering the film at the stage when you encountered it, and how that might have impacted on the way you thought about music, or whether that, how it resonated for you as an idea.
Well, it's strange like that for a film about identity, the idea of the music is that there is no identity. So we come up with the idea very early on that the music would function as a Greek chorus off stage somewhere in the character of the gods, looking down on these human beings who are just irrelevant. So the idea was that the score didn't function as a traditional score underpinning the action and underpinning the narrative, even though the audience might interpret it that way. So, for example, there's a scene where Orla Brady's character is lying in bed. She's shot from above. I think there's a storm approaching, and she's had her first encounter with Rose, and she's remembering her own rape. And the music is this very deep, portentous kind of brass. But the idea is that it's the Greek chorus saying, look, another woman being raped, another human has been raped. This is what humans do. So it isn't about Orla's character, it's about all women. And it's this idea that the chorus is representing voices from history, loads of different women that this has happened to. And then in the character of the gods, they start to find it amusing. So when we cut outside, I think she's standing outside on a tennis court, I tried to put a kind of a humorous thing into the music where the gods just are now finding it hilarious that humans continue to do this. And then the music just stops because they've lost interest. And we tried that approach several times, where I think when Anne's character has first met her mother on the film set and she is kind of spurned by her, goes out, she's sitting in the car and she's crying and she's upset, and then we just cut the music dead, but not in a kind of a filmy way where the music then kind of continues on with a little bit of reverb. We just cut it dead. The idea being that the gods just lost interest, they've looked away somewhere else. And that was a pivotal discovery in terms of the music, because there was two huge kind of challenges for me in writing the music for this film. Is that, one, when I saw the film first, I realized that this film doesn't need music. Quote unquote, didn't need music. Like lots of films, when you see them, you can say, okay, these scenes are going to need support. This car chase is obviously going to need music. This scene is going to need it. Rose Pastry doesn't need music. You could take all the music off and this would still be a fantastically effective film. And then the second challenge was that it's also a very quiet film. The characters speak very quietly. There's lots of empty spaces. There's lots of cameras creeping up dark corridors through empty car parks, empty spaces where potentially people could be attacked. So there was that technical challenge of how does music even get into this film without, appearing almost like a kind of a Seth Rogen character kicking in the door going, music's here, and just killing that kind of very carefully calibrated balance that Joe and Christine had created. And when we kind of hit on this idea of the Greek chorus, that just blew the doors open, figuratively. Just go, oh, now we know what we can do. And the music could be quite big. It's very, very big, but it was big because we discovered that it had a role, it had a distinctive voice. And even like we made sure, again, the audience wouldn't be expected to pick up on this, but every single musician on the score is female, just to just try and imbue the score with some kind of female energy. The chorus is female, they're singing in Greek. I'm a very kind of a big kind of fan that of the idea that music should have a job to do, as opposed to just following slavishly along and telling the audience what they can already see on the screen. There's obviously a role for that. There's lots of films where that's the job, but in this film that wasn't the role. The music had to go somewhere else, and this idea of the Greek chorus was it. I think just the real, I think for me, one of the most effective cues is the scene where Aidan Gillen's character has attempted to rape Rose, and he's remembering it, and the music is building up to this peak, and then we just cut it dead, and he's just left alone in a room with the sound of his own breath and his own humanity or whatever. And again, it's this idea of that the chorus have looked at it, the Greek chorus have been watching, the gods have been watching, and now they just looked away. So that was it. That was the approach, and that was we followed that line rigorously, and it was a testament to me that how close myself, Joe, and Christine was that we were working on the score for 2 months. Every single day I would send a cue over from Ireland. They would respond, we would change a note here or whatever. But in the big cue that we called Mother, which was the second cue where Rose visits her mother on set, that was a huge cue. There was one little 2-bar section that I kept skipping over, and there was only 2 notes in it that just sounded like score, and I just kept on, we'll sort that later. And you know, the months were ticking by, the weeks ticking by, we were looking at other music and we were doing other things, and we were looking at, got to the end of the film and we were calibrating the exact end over Anne's look to make it sure that it was exactly right. And we were just about to sign off, and I was about to say, and now those 2 notes, and I think it was either Joe or Christine, but, and it's just one place, a time code, whatever, and they literally went straight to that bit. And that's how in tune we were, and how kind of deep into the kind of whole process we went. I mean, for me, it was tremendously exciting, being that closely involved.
How did that process fit into where the film was? Was that sort of made in tandem, or was it sort of following a concrete film?
It was picture locked from my memory. I think it was done, and I
more or
wasn't.
less. There was a few little tweaks.
Yeah,
more or less.
A few little tweaks.
Yeah, there may have been a bit of adjustment. If you do it too early, I guess, and the film hasn't got its identity, you may show it too early, and it's not ready to receive this new visitor, if you will, trying to use these kind of this analogy, and it needs to be robust enough about itself before I think it's introduced to music. Now, it is possible, and it would be interesting to try, and as the edit goes on, that you have a relationship with the music, and it does a back and a forth, and that would be a certain kind of a film, and a certain kind of composer, and a certain kind of score. I mean, obviously you'd need a flexible composer, so not very good for Stephen. He's very rigid. I'm joking. But I think for us, it was clear that the edit got there, and then you share it, and then you can sort of come up with various options and where you might want to go with this, and then you know, option 1 or 2, or the more audacious option 3, which for us was the one that we were very keen on, what Stephen did. So, and we like, you know, very declaratory music and score, that it's not, you know, subtly, I mean, you do see it from time to time, or well, very regular actually, and normally there's a great kind of trying to manipulate under the radar. You know it. But we didn't like that. We like that kind of you know, a more present, dialed up. And it was interesting because we were watching this film the other night that was in a Night Streams film festival, and William Friedkin is going to Bernard Herrmann to talk about the score for The Exorcist. And Bernard Herrmann was quite disparaging about the film, but says, you know, we could save it if we do this and this. And it was quite clear to William Friedkin, you are completely wrong for this job. And he says, now this is at that time the greatest film composer living, and it's true. And William Friedkin was the 4th choice to make the film. Kubrick number 1, Mike Nichols number 2, can't remember who was number 3. But he was the right one for that task, and then the composer was also the right one, or the various bits of music. but it's a delicate process, and it's the one thing that we as directors you're leaving the door open for this new element to come in that could do the stamp on it and change the course of it completely.
Yeah.
It's a nerve-wracking moment, Christine.
And as Steve was saying, it's a very quiet film, and we tend to edit with tank music, and we found that the film was quite resistant to tank music. And when we had our various kind of showing of the edit along the way, everybody said, it doesn't need music, it doesn't need music. So that was the thing that came out from the screenings, but we felt that there was a space for music if we could make it work. And we've worked with Stephen before, and actually on Mr. John, we worked with Stephen in a very different way, because he came into the process earlier, and as we were still editing, we hadn't gotten to picture lock. So the journey was different, but we had worked very well with Stephen and really enjoyed it. So we felt, well, if somebody can do it and find a way of making a score work, it'll probably come through us working with Stephen. And when you get used to something that's very quiet, it is quite shocking to then put quite a big score, and it is quite big along the way. So you've got to kind of make all these big mental adjustments yourself as you're watching it. But I kind of feel that we got there very quickly. I did anyway, watching the edit then with Stephen's score. And I think it was quite a brave score. I completely love it. And it was a very satisfying creative journey that we went on. But as Stephen said, it wasn't so obvious and clear that the film even really needed us. But I'm now so glad it has us. And I love the film as it is. I know that Anne, you saw the film for the first time in London, so you'd never seen it with the music and how it all came together in that way. I'm sure that's quite kind of a lot to take in, you know, with an audience in such a public way, to absorb all those different.
I'm glad that there was such a good audience reaction, because I did see a film I was in and the audience reaction wasn't so good, and that was like killer. So yeah. I sweated definitely less in this, because I'm so happy with it as well, and the music is one of my favorite like soundtracks in anything ever as well. It's like incredible. I love hearing the story as well, because I'm so not involved in any of that, unfortunately, but yeah, so it's just really interesting to hear all this.
It's interesting, like I've been doing this 30 years, and you know, the involvement of directors in the score obviously are different. Like some directors, you know, see you in a month and just deliver the score. Other directors come out every now and then. I would say by a huge margin, Joe and Christine are the most involved anyone has ever been in a score. They were involved at the quantum level, but which was fantastic, because you're aware that you're working with material that is absolutely wonderful. And the thing I think often people don't realize about doing this type of job is it's not like normal jobs where you want to get the job done. Doing the job is the passion. So to work with someone like Joe and Christine over 2 months, where the only thing I lived and breathed was the music for this film and the characters, and to get up every day, to go to work and to realize that all I was doing was this, was fantastic. And some of the pivotal moments in the score came from Joe and Christine, didn't come from me. So like, I remember Joe saying, you know, could we take the timpani out and just have that alone in the house where Anne visits the house? Go, Jesus, that's a bloody brilliant idea. I never would have thought of that. Or can we take this cue here and throw it up here? Go, wow, never thought of that either. So we worked incredibly closely, and it was really exciting to see change. Like, so as Christine said, we kind of agreed the overall arc of it very quickly. And then we spent 2 months just calibrating and moving things around. And it was fantastic, you know, to be that involved. You really felt part of the genesis, or the giving birth to this wonderful film, as opposed to, I think it wouldn't have been as exciting to just deliver the score and go, yeah, that all works, thanks very much. So they really were very involved, and they are acutely aware of, as I said about the earlier story about that 2 notes they found in the score, like the score is 40 minutes long, and they remember those 2 notes and they kept in their head. It's terrific to be involved in that level of detail, and to see it making a difference. So, yep.
We are nearing the end, so I just want to sort of end on, you know, this film really deals with a lot of important personal issues, sexual assault, adoption, that process. I mean, what does it mean? Anyone can answer this. What does it mean for you to sort of address these really relevant and really important topics that are maybe difficult but important?
Yeah, maybe I'll start. You live with the film for a long time, developing it. It needs to resonate with you, and it needs to be important to you. Obviously, since we began the process of making the film, lots of things have happened along the way. Like, for example, even within the film industry, the Me Too movement has been incredibly big. But to address issues about the impact of violence and how it resonates over the years, decades, how it impacts on somebody's life going forward was something that we wanted to explore and to look at. And I guess it's not like the idea of a child who's rape conceived came completely fully formed from the beginning, but it arrived quickly. And I think that that's maybe something we don't think about very often. We have a lot of films that focus on rape, and maybe the nitty gritty of, was somebody raped or weren't they? And was consent given or wasn't it? And the place of justice as we, you know, hand over to the justice system, the desire for justice to be done, how that's explored in film. But I guess the one real kind of horror at the heart of rape is the fact that it can also create a life, and then that life lives under the shadow of this terrible violent act. And we wanted to explore that and go on a journey with that. But as we've talked about earlier with regard to your first question, Catherine, an ongoing theme for us is also identity, and the identity under duress, or the fact that identity is mutable, or the fact that behind one mask is another mask, in terms of how we make our way through our life and in relationship to the character of Rose. And that was also really important. So to go back to what I said earlier, you need to feel and care about the subject matter, and it needs to be important with you and to resonate with you, and you need to feel that it's a story or a set of ideas that you want to explore and to stay with, because you'll be with them for a long time. And it's hard to go really back to the very first piecing together of the ideas, but there was things that were there from the beginning, and that we certainly wanted to explore, and that you feel a responsibility towards.
Yeah, I'd say like from an acting perspective, it's always really hard to play anything in context, especially like politically or, you know, in the grand scheme of things. You kind of narrow it down to this one life perspective, if that makes sense. And the funny thing is, like, I was thinking of it as a kind of a Greek myth type thing. Like, I did see the biological dad, played by Aidan Gillen, as like the Zeus character, because he was like mad for rape, and, you know, like in all Greek mythology, it's all very, like, they're all at it. But like, I think you very rarely get to see from, you know, in a way, I guess I saw my character as the consequence as a life. I guess a consequence is personified in a way, just in how that feeling and that damage, how it could be imbued forever, a person's forever type thing. But yeah, I thought that was yeah, I don't know, I think everything that ended up in the film was always there along. I remember talking to Orla as well, like the size, I suppose, of everything, and how that's, especially in how Christina and Joe directed us to keep it contained in some ways, and to keep that, to keep it very, what's the word, condensed in you. And I think me and Orla found that very interesting, because all you want to do is, why, or Rim God and all the rest. But so that was made it very, I guess, personal. Made a big thing personal, and in whatever way you experience, I guess, assault or rape or anything like that, and hearing it from friends or in the news or whatever form, to be able to explore and not play in it, but you know what I mean. It's hard to find use your acty words when you talk about horrible things, but yeah, to get to, I suppose, explore all around it, I guess, because you don't like, it's not, in some films it's like this peak moment in a woman's life is or the peak low moment in a woman's life is all to do with this other man, or the thing that happened to them. But this is actually about a mother and a daughter, really, and their whole life. It's not, the rape itself is like not this big exploitative thing that makes you gag to watch, which I see in a lot of stuff, and you go like, oh, do I have to sit through this? You kind of see the before and after, really, and all the rest around it, which is nice. I think a great way of doing it, a different way of doing it.
Well, thank you so much. That was a very poignant answer all around. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have this film. I think it's really so beautiful, moving, thrilling. It's all of it. So excited to have it.